Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Pause the video right now to check out my social media, my radio show, and thatdrummerguy.com. And most of all, enjoy the following presentation.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how you doing?
I'm doing good. My apologies for earlier. I'm not entirely sure what happened. I tried calling a few times and it wasn't going through. It might have been something on my end. I'm not entirely sure.
What, you were calling the 913 number, right?
Yes.
Okay, let me double, that's my, that's my office line, and every time I have to give someone that number, I have to actually pull up the signature from my email because I don't call myself very often. But yeah, no, that's the correct number. So I wonder if there's something wrong with the phone system today or something. That's a concern. Well, anyway, so sorry about that. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened either.
Well, regardless of that, I'm glad you were able to make the time to be able to do this, and it's awesome to be able to talk to you about some brand new Spock's Beard.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. And so far, the response from at least the reviewers has been pretty favorable. So that's always encouraging this early in the game.
Oh, very much so. And, with a month and a couple weeks out from the physical release through InsideOut Music, I've been very gracious to be able to also check out the album. And it just feels like with every album that's, at least with what you've been a part of, it feels like you're constantly getting bigger, better, and stronger with every album. And it really feels like with this one, I mean, you're just shining through more than I've ever heard you do with Spock's Beard. And it's so cool to be able to hear that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I had a little bit more freedom during the recording of this one, and by that I mean, when you're walking into a situation like this where there's such a history and such big shoes to fill. There was a tendency to have me, I was being directed quite a bit on the first time. I'm trying to figure out a way to say that nicely, but I was being directed quite a bit on the first couple albums, and I think on this one, I don't know, maybe just the force of will. I just, every time they would say, "Hey, do that again with less vibrato," I would actually be mimicking them back to, we'd be both saying, "Hey, do it again with less vibrato," and so there's a little bit more of my personality coming through. It's a little bit more naturally how I would approach things than I would say was the case on the first two albums. So anyway, that was about as diplomatic as I could put that.
But it's just like it's a good learning experience when it comes from that too. I mean, especially with this case, getting a bit more freedom and being able to be yourself more on this album. I mean, I can definitely hear that from a musician standpoint. I mean, it feels like that way throughout the entire album with everyone involved as well. I mean, it just feels like such a great, refreshing change of pace, which is what's going on with Noise Floor.
Yeah, I think it is. It does definitely separate itself even from the previous two releases. And in some ways, of course, it harkens back to even, there's always bits and pieces. I mean, you really can't get away from sounding like classic Spocks when you have organs and mellotron and which are still an integral part of the sound, and then Al's guitar tone is so signature. And then on this album in particular, having Nick's flavor of drums on there, which is so distinctive. I mean, you being a drummer, I'm assuming by your name.
Oh, yes.
How aptly named. I mean, you probably recognize the subtle differences and not so subtle differences between Nick and Jimmy. Jimmy is great in his own right. They're both great drummers, but Nick's got a specific voice that is, associated with Spock's Beard. So it's kind of cool to hear that come back for this album. I wish we could actually convince him to just be in the band, but we haven't been successful at that yet.
Yeah, myself included. It was fantastic to see Nick a part of the band once again, even if it was just in a guest drumming role. And it was great to be able to hear like his simple little nuances which really shine through with Spock's Beard music. I mean, whether it's just the fills or the timing or whatever the case is, and being able to hear your vocals over his playing, and of course, the rest of the band that's going on there. I mean, it was just. I just really love this lineup that's going on there, and even if it is just for one album or in the future, if anything does happen, I mean, I'm glad to see at least in the recorded form for Noise Floor that it was able to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would at this point, I think I would push for, let's just keep the actual lineup, the four of us, and whenever we record, try to get Nick, and then we'll just have a touring guy. I mean, a lot of bands have to do that sort of thing, so why not? Because, I mean, for me, Nick is easily one of my favorite drummers of all time. And so, for me, it's always a pleasure to be certainly on a stage with him, or certainly on an album as well. And that's why when I did a solo album back in 2007, he was the guy I called. And plus, I couldn't afford Vinnie Colaiuta, so but those are the two guys. In fact, I kind of went back and listened to my solo album a couple nights ago and kind of binged on it, because I just listened to, of all albums to associate Vinnie Colaiuta with, I just listened to 10 Sumner's Tales and by Sting, and the drumming on that album and the sound of the drums on that album it's stellar. And I was like, man, there's only two people on this planet that can make 5 groove like they do. I mean, of course, there's the Dave Brubeck band took a shot at it, but Vinny, when he's playing that song 7 on 7 Days on Sting's album, that's the groovinest 5 time I've ever heard. And then, but Nick's got that same sort of thing where he makes the songs have almost like a danceable pulse regardless of the time signature. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah,
I think it's a rare quality.
Yeah, and you can really hear that with the new album, too. I mean, even though it's more subtle time changes that are going on this time around, I mean, Nick just makes it feel so natural. And, of course, when the rest of you guys are able to add your nuances onto there as well, I mean, every song just feels so natural, even if it does go into different signatures.
Except for Box of Spiders. That one's purposefully unnatural sounding.
Well, that's true.
I think that one is, it's kind of welcome at that point, because, at that point in the album, there's been so much melody and so much kind of hooky choruses, and you get to that song and it's like, oh, we still do this too. So it was kind of a refreshing spot to put that song.
Yeah, and it's in a great spot in the track list, too. I mean, when it's like getting all these songs and, like the great hooky melodic moments that are going on there. And then you get a song like Box of Spiders to be able to just switch things up for just a little bit. I mean, it's a nice little left of center change that spices up the album just a little bit.
Yeah, I think that song and one of the songs that Al and I helped out on wrote, and shoot, I should have the track listings in front of me because I'm probably going to space on, Have We All Gone Crazy Now, is also another one of those songs where this kind of goes to show you, when you're in the writing process, sometimes you'll hear demos and you're going, how is this going to shape out? I really don't, I didn't have much hope for that song during the demo process. And then when everything started to come together on it, you start to hear, and then Rich gets his hands on it and starts mixing it. All of a sudden it became this really oddball, quirky, but really cool tune, So I was pretty stoked with, and it was nice to have, Al's contribution and Rio's contribution to writing on this album that Rio's in particular had been missing from the last 2 albums. And it was really great to be able to write a song with him, which he and I had never collaborated. And by collaboration, I just mean he's had a bunch of music and I wrote all the lyrics, and it's not in the same room, but still, a remote collaboration. And but that song turned out really cool too, which is the last song on the proper CD, which is called Beginnings. So that was one that I was pretty excited about.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that as well. I mean, it was fantastic to be able to hear his contributions to the writing process again. I mean, some of my favorite Spock Spirit songs are the ones that he's had some, at least more of the collaborative and writing effort on there. And it's great to be able to see that with Noise Floor. And Beginnings is one of my favorite tracks on the album. And for that reason, I mean, I love hearing his little spice and flavor that goes into Spock's beard.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly such a strong voice in the general sound, but yeah, his writing style's also a little left of center too, and it definitely adds a dimension. He kind of comes from almost a fusion background. You can really hear that in Box of Spiders. You know, he's more like I think if he had his way, he'd be playing in a fusion group. You know, he likes to shred in that way too. He's very, when he's taking a solo, it's a lot of out choices. So you can kind of hear that, but certainly, it certainly translates into how he writes too, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Although, one that isn't left of center, but also a great representation of where you guys are at right now in 2018. It's great to see that the beginning track, "To Breathe Another Day," has been getting all the reviews that I've been positive reviews that I've been able to see online. Whether it comes into the documentary video that came along with it, the actual music video, it's great to see the response that's going on with that.
The music video itself is pretty hilarious.
Oh yes.
But, what's funny is if you follow, my morbid curiosity leads me down to the comment section every once in a while, and it's funny to hear people go, "Man, you would think they would have had a better budget." I can't believe the director thought it was a good idea to use that much wind on Dave. And I'm like, budget director? Are you guys kidding me? That's Dave's phone. And his own fan, and we're just kind of taking a piss on it because not on the song, but on the idea that we were asked to play along with it. I just thought it was so weird because it wasn't while we were actually recording; it was an afterthought that the record company said, "Hey, we should do something like this," and they showed us a video where a band was actually tracking live in different rooms, and which was really cool, but we're like, well, the song's already recorded. So, we don't want the release to be something other than the recording. So we ended up basically lip syncing, and I'm like, this is way too weird. So I couldn't help but make strange faces and, kind of ham it up a bit. And Dave did the same thing. That's pretty funny. When I saw his video back, I just fell on the floor with the wind and stuff. It was like Michael Bolton on the beach. Awesome.
Yeah, that's what I loved about it. I mean, it's just like the right amount of humor and sarcasm and tongue-in-cheek stuff that's going on there, while still being able to show off a great song. I mean, it's got what I'm looking for in a music video. It makes me want to go back and keep watching it, even though it's, even with it not being in the studio recording it, like you were mentioning, like it's an afterthought, but it's so much fun to be able to watch back and enjoy it.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's kind of interesting to see. Well, I don't know what Dave doesn't really record in his tool shed, but it is interesting to see people's kind of like home recording environment. He is in his garage, but it's in a separate part of his garage that's actually got a nice computer and a chair. But I'm sitting there at my desk. I'm sitting exactly where I'm sitting right now, and my office is my studio, so it's kind of one and the same. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of fun to peer into people's kind of rehearsal space, and that's Al's studio too, that's in the shot. So it's kind of cool. But, when I recorded that song, of course, I was in LA at a proper studio. There are some songs that I recorded from home on this album, but we try to get as much done at Rich's studio because he's got big expensive mics and old school compressors and all the gadgets and voodoo.
And what's that like for you? I mean, being able to adapt to a situation like that where some parts are recorded in a full-fledged studio, some of them are recorded in your studio and stuff like that.
Well, I always prefer to actually do as much as I can do as I can possibly do at home. And I think because first of all, when you're in the studio, especially as a vocalist, it's kind of a fishbowl scenario. You're they have a talkback button in the control room, and there's at least 3 people sitting in there at any given time. They don't always hit the talkback button between takes. So oftentimes you do a take, you're like, I think that was pretty good, and you see them in there and they're talking and gesturing and kind of shaking their heads in disapproval. I'm like, what the hell? You know? And so you're kind of like, you know, I don't know. I think I do better when I'm just free to just record at home, and I can do 15,000 takes and it doesn't cost anybody anything, you know. So there's that too. You know, there's no hourly rate ringing up when I'm at home. But that said, there is something to be said for having other people's perspective when you're shaping a part. And it certainly translates into, if not the lead vocal lines, it certainly had a play in, you know, some of the harmonies that developed around some of these songs, because a lot of those were, you know, some of them were pre-scripted to an extent, but a lot of them we kind of developed, you know, in the studio. Al and I would just be like, hey, why don't we throw this note in there? You know, and you end up with like 13-part harmony. How are we ever going to do this live? But still, I mean, some really cool harmony moments as a result of collaboration in the studio too. So, and you know, I don't know that I would do that at home. I think I would try to make the lead vocal so strong that, you know, the harmonies would be kind of the afterthought. Of course, I write harmonies into my songs, but anyway, very long-winded answer. I shouldn't have had coffee right before calling you.
I actually really appreciate it, though. I mean, I love getting that insight because, I mean, with every band, every album, every situation, I mean, there's so many different ways that you can look at it. I mean, sometimes doing the bedroom recording is the best way to go. Sometimes building your own studio is the best way to go. Sometimes just renting out a studio for a weekend or however long it takes to record an album or at least get some parts done is the right way to go. And I love the fact that it was actually done in different places and there was the right amount of working from home, working in your own studio, and collaboration that was going on at the same time. That way you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I think on Oblivion Particle, the previous album, there was we were a little more isolated. There was at least 2 occasions where Al and I got together to write, and out of those 2 writing sessions came Somebody's Home and came Have We All Gone Crazy. And so, you know, it was really cool. It was, you know, it's an expensive thing because he lives in LA, so he has to fly here, I have to fly there. You know, I live in Northern California, and so, you know, you know, you have to knock out or book a whole weekend because I'm not just going to fly there for one day. Unlike when bands used to live, you know, near each other and you used to just get together and write. That becomes really difficult. So, I mean, for the most part, it's exchange of you know, MP3s and various demos of various completion. But for this album, there was at least, you know, a few songs. I know Stan was actually in with Al, and Rio was around for some of the writing sessions too. So there was a little bit more of, you know, actual collaboration in the same room, which I think kind of translates in this album. I don't know how that would make a difference, but it does, you know, when you're bouncing ideas off of each other and not just, because otherwise, I don't know, when you hear a song that's written by an individual and then you hear another song that's written by a different individual, it almost starts to sound like 2 different bands, you know. I think this album sounds more like the midpoint of what we would all want to be, you know, between the 4 of us, more so than at least the previous album.
Yeah, and I definitely envision it in my head. I mean, with the way that most of the album goes, I mean, I just imagine when the live shows start to come up and you're able to promote the album live. I mean, I just imagine that they're just going to sound fantastic live for the new songs because of how well organic it sounds with the whole band collaborating on it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to play out too. There's been some talk. Well, we're doing the cruise next year, and then there's been some talk of a possible tour in October, early November, over in Europe, which is, you know, all the American fans are like, "Oh, okay, great, Europe gets to see you again. Good for them." But but yeah, I mean that's kind of a ways off. So right now I'm interested to see which songs are actually going to be, in our live set. And I know that I think Beginnings is going to translate to a live scenario really well. I think Breathe Another Day is obvious. You kind of have to play the opener when you're promoting a new album. But I do think it's going to be a great live song too. So yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what are the other songs we choose for that.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, and that just makes me excited about the talks of live shows, because one of my favorite sets in the last few years was when you guys were playing at Prog Power. I believe that was Jimmy's last show. I might be wrong about that. At Prog Power a couple years ago, and it was my first time being able to see you guys, and just hearing all these songs that I've loved for so long, and finally being able to see them for the first time. And it's just, I love the fact that you guys aren't able to tour all the time, but when you do get together, you guys are able to get together and put on these amazing shows, and it's so great to be able to see that.
Yeah, it was an interesting show. That was actually Jimmy's last show.
Yeah.
And then, of course, being followed by Dragon Force, which was pretty talking about an interesting juxtaposition from Spock Spirit to Dragon Force. But yeah, that was a fun show. Those guys were cool, though. I mean, they're obviously really good musicians. I don't know why I'm going off on a Dragon Force tangent, but hanging out with them afterwards was a lot of fun, because my stepsons, they're all Guitar Hero guys, or were back when Guitar Hero was a thing, and so they all, that was the song on Guitar Hero that everyone, So I took a picture with the guitar player from Dragon Force. They were all freaking out. It was pretty funny. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is the cool thing about a festival like Prog Power. And I imagine that's a case a lot for a lot of, like, the summer festivals that goes on in Europe, is, like, these collaborative shows where it's like you get all these different styles of rock and metal and stuff together, and you're able to just have a great night or a great weekend or whatever the case is, just enjoying different styles of music. So for me as a fan, it was awesome to be able to see something more subtle like Spock's Beard before kicking into something with like that much energy like Dragon Force.
Yeah. Well, it was certainly interesting. It's definitely it was definitely different. Well, every time I've played a part of Prog Power, which 2 times with Enchant, one in Europe and one here in Atlanta. It's Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
It always felt like, it was nice that they had us there, but I'm like, man, we're listening to the bands that are going before us, and we've heard of the bands and that are, coming up after us. I'm like, dude, we're going to be like the Kenny G of this festival. We're going to go about, anyway. But it was fun,
Oh, yeah.
It's a good vibe. We were pretty well received. I think it's kind of like that instrumental song in the middle of the album. It's like a kind of a sonic shake-up to, and then you can appreciate the double kick drum and the barking again.
Oh, yeah, that's a very interesting approach to looking at that. And yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And that actually reminds me of with this album, with Noise Floor, I mean, being able to see like the second disc of songs that didn't make it onto the full album, and you have it ending with an instrumental like Armageddon Nervous, which that is a brilliant name, and I love the way that it kind of ends like that. I mean, like having these songs that didn't make it onto the full album, but are still being able to get some representation on a disc.
Yeah, I mean, I think that grew from the fact that we really didn't want to exclude anything on this one. Everything that we'd recorded, we're like, the label was saying, this is going to be way too long of an album, and we want to keep it at this number of minutes, and all the writers, and the band was like, I don't want to leave that one off. And it was kind of, of course, everyone's got their own opinion about what should be included and what should not. And this was kind of like the compromise that the label said, well, why don't we just put out a second CD and we'll throw everything on there. And so that's how that came about. And then, of course, calling it the cutting room floor it's pretty funny actually, because most of my interviews have been with guys from Europe who don't know, that phrase as like a video editing term. When you're making a movie, the stuff that you don't use used to literally end up on the cutting room floor, the editing room floor. And so that was like everything that didn't make the movie. But yeah, I mean, there's some good stuff on that too. I mean, Days Will Remember is definitely one of my favorite songs of the 2 discs. It has a very Kansas-like sound to it. I think that's kind of why it got pushed over to that other disc, is because it was so Kansas-y. And and it's not even a coincidence. John had actually written that one and part of Breathe Another Day as they were 2 songs that he was going to submit to Kansas when they were picking their own material, when they were choosing material for the new album. But then they decided not to use any outside writers. I don't know if you saw that part of the documentary, but
oh yeah, I remember that. And it's amazing how that can work. I mean, when you're working with collaborators like that, I mean, sometimes when something might have an idea for a different band, it sounds like it was meant to be for the band that it ends up with. So, I mean, with both of those songs, I mean, it just feels so natural to have them as Spock's Beard songs. I mean, when I listen back to them, it seems like such a natural fit.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of we've worked with John for a long time, so almost anything he writes has like a Spock's flavor to it. It seems. I've heard some of the material that he's written with no intent on using it for Spock's, and it's still like, you sure we can't use that one? 'Cause, and he's just a brilliant writer, and he writes so much. But those 2 songs in particular are right. I actually recorded them to submit to Kansas, and I mean, let's be real, I wanted that gig when Steve Walsh died. So I recorded it, and so the vocals were already lead vocal quality and already recorded when we even started this project. So that was kind of nice. That's one of those 2 songs that were definitely large parts that were recorded at home. Days Will Remember was entirely recorded at home. And so yeah, I mean, they're a fit because I'm such a Kansas freak that anything that I get to sing that has any kind of like a Kansas tint to it is going to be very natural for me anyway. That was kind of true of Treasure Abandoned from Brief Nocturnes too. It was a very Kansas song, and I just loved that one too.
Yeah, and it's really great to be able to hear you get those Kansas influences when you do get the opportunities to do that, and whatever you get to do. I mean, like, I can definitely hear the passion that you have for the band, and just like you said, it would have been amazing to be able to see you a part of that. But just being able to see your love for the band and being able to shine in just the right amount of ways when it comes to Spock's Beard, being able to show off that side of you. I mean, it's really cool to hear that from the fan perspective.
It's very different from Neil, and it's very, it's different from that matter, from Nick, for that matter. And, but yeah, I mean, we all have our influences. That one seems to poke out more often than a lot of my other influences, just because that I basically learned to sing by coming home after school to an empty house and cranking up old Kansas records, and I actually really learned how to sing by cranking up Drastic Measures. That was which is the second album with John Elefante on vocals. So
right.
Despite being a massive Steve Walsh fan, I really learned to sing by singing along with John Elefante.
Yeah.
Still one of my favorite singers.
Oh, that's so cool. And yeah, I mean, being able to grow up like that, I mean, I pretty much did the same thing when it came to my drumming too. Like, every time I would come home from school, I was usually alone, so I would go set up, make sure my drums were set up. I'd either put on the radio or put on some of my favorite albums and just play along for a few hours, and just being able to practice by myself. I didn't have a band at the time, so it was just fun being able to jam out with music that I love to play. And it's really great to see that you were also doing the same thing too with bands that you love.
I think part of it was just being poor. I mean, To be honest, it's funny because my wife and I have a nonprofit organization that works with at-risk youth, and we teach guitar lessons, and we give them guitars when they finish the program. And we were telling them the other day, a lot of these kids come from pretty financially destitute situations, and that's how they end up with their parents. In some cases, will sell them into sex slavery, or they will, or they'll just be around drugs their whole life, and just get into really bad situations. So these are the girls we're teaching right now, and I was, it came up the other day. It's like part of the, life is always giving you good and bad things, and sometimes the bad stuff turns into a good thing. And the fact that I didn't have a TV, and the fact that I couldn't afford a bunch of albums. I had a paper route, and I'd use the money to buy clothes and cassette tapes of bands that I like. But I couldn't go. I was always afraid to get into Rush because they had too many albums, and so I kind of just stuck to Kansas for a long time, and it's funny, people. My catalog of stuff that I listened to as a kid is pretty narrow compared to a lot of progressive rock fans who know every Gentle Giant album, know every Yes album back and forth, and I was like, that was just pretty much Kansas for me. But that was because of financial limitations, but also having that time. I was the youngest of four, and the other three kids were out of the house by the time, or working by the time I was like a freshman and sophomore in high school. So every day was able to come home to an empty house, didn't have a TV, had a stereo, and so every day was just singing my guts out. And that really started in junior high, but I got more and more serious. I don't even know if I knew I was aiming towards anything. I was just fun. And then a friend of mine, I didn't even know if I was good, and I started dating a girl who was a singer, and she goes, "Oh, you can actually sing," and I'm like, "Really?" and then I started taking it seriously and joined a band, and then it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, you've put out a couple decent albums since you had that realization that you could sing, but no, seriously, first of all, I did not realize that you had a nonprofit like that, so I gotta commend you for doing that with your wife. That is so amazing for you to be able to do something like that and help these kids out, being able to do something that means something to these kids when they're working towards a goal with that kind of art. So that is just amazing for you to be able to do that, and that's so great to be able to see that. But also coming from those limitations when you were growing up, I mean, it's awesome to see that you were able to persevere the way that you did too. I mean, just from finding something to do when you were younger, just finding this joy in a band like Kansas, and being able to just keep working on yourself until you were able to get like a nice trained voice, join a band eventually, and then go on to have the career that you do now in music and otherwise. I mean, it's so awesome to see how you were able to do that.
Yeah, well, I feel very fortunate. It's funny too, because when you're a kid, I mean, part of the being steered towards progressive rock just by my own personal taste was kind of like an unexpected benefit. When I was, of course, the band that I was in high school was not progressive at all. It was like almost kind of, progressive in the way that Iron Maiden's progressive. It was kind of like Iron Maiden with a little boy singer, and so imagine what that would sound like. But as I got out of high school, I was in like a kind of a funk rock band, and then saw this ad for a band that was looking for the next Steve Hogarth. I had no idea who Steve Hogarth was, but they go, our influences are Kansas, Queensryche, and a few others, Merlin, and I forgot who else they mentioned, but I saw Kansas and Queensryche, and those are like two of my favorite bands at the time, and I gave them a call, and got to be, I got involved in progressive rock, and it's funny, I had so many talented friends that really never got to do anything. They still play in bar bands and stuff just like I do. but they never really got to do anything. So I feel really fortunate for having been steered towards this side of music where it's not going to be, you're not going to make, well, some people make their living from it, but might not make your living from it, but I've gotten to tour the world. I mean, I feel super fortunate, because I've got friends far more talented than me that never got to tour anywhere, So it's been a fun ride. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, and again, it's just it's so cool to see that with the life that you've lived, the life that you're living right now. All these bands that you've either done guest spots with, or been full-fledged members of, or created. I mean, just going throughout the entire catalog that you've done. I mean, it's awesome to see everything that you've been able to do right now, and all of it leading right now to the new Spock Spirit album, which is coming out next month. And just like seeing this third album that you've been able to sing on for Spock Spirit, and just like all of it leading up to this, amongst everything else that you do. And it's great to see after all this time that you're still able to have that passion and joy for making music, singing music, and just being able to just enjoy yourself. It's so cool to see that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's when you play with a lot of other musicians, you have the type of musician that when rehearsal is over, they put down their instrument and they walk out of the room, and then especially when Jimmy was in the band, Jimmy, Dave, and I, when rehearsal would be done or there'd be a quiet moment, we'd be breaking into a cover song or something, and we're just, and I don't know how Jimmy still has the enthusiasm. He's not in the band anymore, but I'm still talking about him. But because he's been doing music since he was an embryo. But I kind of feel like, it was because I started taking it seriously later, as a early teenager rather than someone who was forced to learn scales when he was 6. I've worked with a lot of those musicians, and some of them lose their fire, I think, as a result of having it kind of beaten into them. But it was always a choice, it was always something I loved to do just for fun. Like I said, I didn't know I was practicing when I was a kid. I didn't know I was trying to shape anything. I was just seeing if I could sing as high as Steve Walsh, or seeing if I could hit, the high note in, what's that Queensryche tune from The Warning? I Take Hold of the Flame, or something like that. Yeah. And I used to be able to. I don't know if I could do that now. I'm fairly sure I couldn't.
Well, you never know. I mean, if you ever get the opportunity, I mean, if you get in that spot, try it. See if that can get there, or if you can work back to it. I mean, I'd love to be able to see if you could do that.
Let's do it live on the air. No, I think I know. Well, I know my limitations. I haven't lost too much range for someone who's a little years old, but there are some things. I listen to some of especially like the Fa Chamber album that I was on. I'm like, I'm so glad that was a project band and we never had to take that on the road, because I probably would have ended up a mute after 6 months or 3 months of singing that stuff. I probably would have lasted about 4 days. It was so so challenging. Anyway.
Yeah, it's funny because I love that project so much, but yeah, I'm glad to see that it didn't take that live toll on you as well. I mean, I can just imagine with like so many of the notes and things that are going on with that album. I mean, I can imagine like unless there was some way to be able to like persevere like through that, I could see that just taking so much out of your voice and not being able to recover much. Yeah,
well, it probably changed the way I behave off stage on tour pretty dramatically. and my quote unquote diet, the things I eat and or drink. But anyway.
Oh yeah.
I would have to be pretty. I would have, if I had to tour with that band in particular, I would have to be pretty darn disciplined on tour. There's just no way that I could actually enjoy myself really. Once the show's done, I'd have to just go hide in the corner and not talk to anyone. That's when you're touring and stuff, it's not really even the singing that does you in, it's the talking. as a singer, the worst thing you can do is talk in a situation where you have to talk loud. It's like much less healthy than just over singing.
Oh yeah, and I've always noticed that as well too. I mean, no matter the type of show, I mean, whether there's like multiple bands playing or just traveling or whatever the case is, I mean, I can just imagine being the vocalist and just constantly having to use your voice more than you normally would when you just do normal conversation. I mean, I can just imagine that taking a toll out of you, and then you have to go on stage and be able to do a full set of music, and then you have to chorus with the fans again afterwards, and just repeat that cycle for as long as the tour is.
Yeah, and it does. It definitely takes a toll sometimes, and then you're shaking hands, and you're catching colds, and but you got to do it. I mean, and it's half the fun too, is being able to actually meet people that these days, especially, it's such a tight knit little circle. I don't know what it's like for the bands that play huge venues all the time, but I'm sure even with them, there's certain people that kind of, are, that they see every time they go out, and who's always in the VIP, but for us, it's like, it almost feels like, you recognize half the audience a lot of times. Like, oh yeah, that guy. I don't remember any names, but I see faces. I'm horrible with names.
Oh yeah, and that happens too. I mean, sometimes people are good with faces and bad with names, or vice versa, or sometimes they just remember T-shirts or something like that. I mean, it always varies.
Right. Yeah, but even so, there's definitely some people that when Spock goes out or Enchant goes out, there are certain people that will be at 4 or 5 of the gigs. They will just drive to the next one. There's a handful of names that I could put out there, but I don't know if that would be kosher. But but anyway, it's just, yeah. I mean, there's definitely like those people that you see so often that you can't help but know who they are. And like our friend Gus, he was a big Enchant fan. He's been to. We've actually hung out with him. I think that's part of what makes the cruises special too. Is you end up having a beer with people and seeing them over and over again. Sometimes you'll be like, "Hey, can I join you for lunch?" And you'll end up having lunch with someone who's a fan, and then the opposite happens too, where you've in the dinner hall where it's just the musicians allowed in that hall, you get to hang out with Adrian Blue and all that. Yeah, it's just pretty cool. You get both sides of the spectrum on the cruises. I think is you get to be the fanboy, and then you get to meet all the people that are nervous to talk to you. It's like, really, Steve Hogarth just walked by. Why are you nervous to talk to me?
Yeah.
When I met Steve Hogarth on the cruise, I was tripping over my tongue so bad. It was really embarrassing. Because it's funny, because I've had those nervous conversations with fans, where fans were nervous, like so many times prior to that, and then he walked by me, and I'm like, "Hi, Mr. Hogarth," and I'm like, "Oh man, it was not smooth."
Oh, that happens to me all the time. Like when I'm at home here doing interviews, I'm able to have like a good fluid conversations, but then when I ever get the opportunity to like meet some of my musical heroes, like I just keep stuttering. I can't get my words out there. I just look like a complete and utter fanboy who doesn't know how to speak. And it's so funny when that happens. I mean, like some people I could see that flattering. It's like, wow, this person's so nervous to meet me, and then other people, it's different for everybody, but it's really funny to be able to have like those moments where it's like the people that inspire you, they're the ones that have accomplished so much in music that meant something to you, and then when you have those moments like that, it's always cool.
Yeah, it's cool to be reminded of how it feels for these other people that meet you. It's funny. My kids get a kick out of it because the few times we played local, my daughter was there, and people were coming up to me afterwards. My daughter was just like laughing. It was like there'd be people like that, and she, like I would tell people, I'm like, you realize at the time I had a window cleaning business. I'm like, you realize I'm going to be scraping bird shit out from under my fingernails tomorrow, right? So relax. I'm not that big of a deal. But it was, that's the cool thing about the cruise. I mean, like, I got to meet Tony Levin, and you meet everybody, Steve Hackett, Adrian Ballou, just like heroes. And of course, on the previous cruise, Kansas was there. And I've met them a few times. But, actually hanging with them instead of, just briefly saying, hi, Mr. Ehart, big fan, was actually just hanging. It was really cool.
Yeah, and, that is such a great thing that a lot of people that might not be in the know don't realize. It's like when you actually do start to have these conversations with people that you admire, or people that have come up along the same time that you have, is that people are people. I mean, like, sometimes they go through similar struggles that you do. Sometimes they have the same taste in what you enjoy. It's just like there's a lot of ways to be able to have this conversation and realize that it's just like, wow, I'm just like talking to a really cool person. That, like, we get each other a lot, and it's just like all these great conversations that you can have just talking to a normal person, rather than feeling like you do have to fanboy out.
Yeah, I think the more, if you get a chance to get to know, I mean, 9 times out of 10, there's not a whole lot of rock star attitude, especially in the progressive rock world. It's been very rare that I've come away from a conversation with someone and thought, oh wow, they're larger than life. They're not on my plane. They're on a whole other plane. And but most of the time, people, if they're cool, like I said, 9 times out of 10, they are just normal people. All these people that you've seen in music videos and seen, watched your whole life. Meeting Steve Morse was kind of like that. For me, being a Kansas fan, and then a huge Steve Morse fan as his solo artist and Dixie Dregs and everything, getting to meet him on the last cruise, the previous one, was just crazy for me. And he's really shy, so when you meet him, you both feel awkward. And I don't want to be the 70th person to tell him I'm a huge fan, because that day. So I didn't even know what to say. I'm like, I don't remember what our conversation was, but it was just a bundle of awkwardness for the most part. But I'm just, I'm just a huge fan. I wanted to be in flying colors. That darn Casey guy. I'm gonna get him next time I see him.
I'm actually thinking about that now, and it's like, I mean, I love what Flying Colors has done so far, but now that you're bringing it up, it's like, I would love to hear your kind of take on that. I mean, making that kind of style. I mean, whether you make a band similar like that, or you do get to work with Steve at some point in a project. I mean, it would be really cool to be able to hear your voice like that.
Yeah, well, that's a story in and of itself. That was a near possibility.
Oh, really?
That was a really depressing day, actually. Yeah, no, I got a call from Neil in December of the year before Flying Colors kind of developed. And he's like, hey, me and some friends are putting together, this is literally what he said, me and some friends are putting together a band, and I'm just wondering if you'd be interested. And I'm like, at the time I wasn't in Spock's Beard, and Chant really wasn't doing anything. And Neil, I'm just a huge fan of Neil and his writing. He's my favorite songwriter, hands down. And so I'm like, of course, anything, even to this day when Neil asks me to do something, even if it's something that makes me really like uncomfortable, I still say yes to everything, anything Neil asks, which is, anyway, but so I'm like, of course, yeah, I'd love to. And then about a month later, he called and he goes, hey, just wanted to let you know where we're at with that. I mean, some of the other guys in the band had someone else in mind, and it was actually one guy in the band had a very specific person in mind. Mike was a big fan of Rev, whatever. Oh, I can't remember. That's horrible. Anyway,
Alpha Rev?
His band is Alpha Rev. Anyway,
yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, at that point, I didn't know who else he was talking about. I'm like, well, who's in the band? Just out of curiosity. And he goes, oh, it's Mike Portnoy, Dave LaRue, and Steve Morse. And, being a big Steve Morse fan, of course I'm a big Dave LaRue fan, and everyone's a Mike Portnoy fan. And I was, so when I heard that, that was a bad day. That was so depressing. But it was only like 3 days later that I got a call from Dave Maros saying, hey, we have these festival gigs coming up, and Nick can't make it. Do you want to step in and sing? So I didn't get to be depressed for very long. The Spock Spirit kind of thing started to develop shortly after that. So
yeah, and that's just a perfect example of like when one door closes, another one opens. I mean, within 72 hours, I mean, you went from possibly being a part of the supergroup to being a part of another long-standing supergroup. Of course, both having ties to Neil Morse, but just like being able to join such an established band like Spock's Beard, and now even more than ever, being able to add your own flair and style to the band. I mean, it's so cool to see like when opportunities don't necessarily go in your favor, they can lead to something that is just as cool.
Yeah, and who knows whether other opportunity would have been even possible had the other one, had the other door not closed. I might have felt like, I don't really have time. Well, we're going into the studio right when one of those festivals are, and so you just never know. And that's just life for you, especially in business, it seems like you go through stretches where you, like, I'll bid my services to 5 consecutive people who are not interested or turn it down, and then it can start to feel really. But if they all said yes, I'd be way too busy. I wouldn't even be able to do music anymore. So it's kind of like that. There's other things on the horizon actually, but I can't really talk about them. But some of those that are developing right now are pretty exciting. I don't know why I brought it up if I can't talk about it though.
Well, it's actually funny because I was going to ask you if there was anything that's coming up in the future, non-Spock Spirit related, but now I'm very interested. I mean, obviously I want to, not talk about it until things are ready to be talked about, but that's awesome to see that there's some other stuff that's going to be going on.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a hint and let the YouTube people continue the suspicions in the thread. But there is a band that has been going for a really long time that was had a huge following and has decided to kind of come to a halt. And 2 of their members don't want to stop making music and reached out to me. So there's this thing that could happen. So, in addition to everything else that's happening, that could be really fun.
Now I just totally see someone picking up this interview, making a huge clickbait article about what the possibilities could be, not checking out the rest of the interview, just checking out this part, and all the suspicions begin until the news comes out, if everything does come to fruition. Yeah,
well, I mean, when I've talked about it kind of elusively to other people, as soon as you say, a band that was pretty big that kind of stopped recently, a lot of people, there's only a few of those. So it narrows it down. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when that point in time comes, I mean, if everything clicks the way that it does, I mean, I would love to be able to talk to you again when that opportunity arises and being able to promote everything with coming with that.
Of course, yeah, sure.
Oh, awesome. Well, I think that's that might be a great note to end on. Leave people guessing as to what's coming next. Thank you so very much for taking all this time to be able to talk to me about everything that's going on in your world right now, past, present, and soon to be future. And of course, talking about the brand new album from Spock's Beard, Noise Floor, which is coming out next month through InsideOut Music. Easily one of my favorite Spock's Beard albums to date. I love what you've done with this album. I love the freedom that you're feeling with this now. I can definitely hear it from the listener perspective, and it was just awesome to have this kind of real conversation with you about music, non-music, and everything else that's going on, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, and I would be remiss if I did not mention that if anybody's interested in the nonprofit organization or hearing a little bit more about that, you can visit legacymusic.online. So legacymusic.online, and there's a place to donate, because we've been supplying these guitars. We've had some people donate, so check it out if you're interested in hearing what that's about. And thank you all for listening. If you're still listening at this point, 56 minutes later. All right, thanks, Josh. It was a pleasure talking to you.